As word of the king's decision to dismiss Jacques Necker, a favorite among Francis's third estate, from his government made its way throughout Parisian households, hundreds of hungry commoners flooded the streets in anger. The mob would march towards the Bastille, a medieval fortress in the heart of Paris which had been underutilized for years and was already planned to be demolished. The Bastille was housing cannons and gunpower the crowd wanted, and was only being guarded by 82 veterans incapable of serving in the field and an additional 32 Swiss soldiers. By the morning of July 14, 1789, roughly 900 prisoners gathered outside the gates of the Bastille, demanding to be let in. However, the Bastille's governor, Bernard-René Jourdan de Launay, refused to concede to the mob's demands but also knew his soldiers could not fight them off without additional reinforcements. Their fate would be sealed after two men from the crowd managed to scale the outer wall of the Bastille and cut the chains keeping the drawbridge upright. As it came crashing down, it would crush one member of the crowd. However, the rest were undeterred as they made their way into the once impenetrable fortress. The crowd was unaware they were not being let in, and rather had broken in with the help of the two men who scaled the wall. The guards began to panic when the mob who'd been trapping them inside the fortress had now suddenly began appearing in front of them. The guards began to open fire on a crowd who had already begun to suspect they were being led into a trap, causing some members of the crowd who had guns to start returning fire. This marked the beginning of what is referred to as the storming of the Bastille, a pivotal event in not only France's history, but the history of civilization. By the time the mob had control of the Bastille, its governor had already been captured and decapitated, his head put on a spike and paraded around for all to see, representing the start of the French Revolution and the beginning of the end of the monarchy. Welcome back to Compelling History. Today we'll be taking a look at the kings of France and how their once ironclad grip on power came to an end. Before we step back into 18th century Paris, make sure to like and subscribe to help the channel continue growing. And make sure to let us know in the comments what you think our next topic should be. Part 1. The System. The monarchs of France, like many European monarchies, operated under a feudal system with the king placed directly at the top of the hierarchy. The king's authority was understood as divinely ordained, a concept known as the divine right of kings. This belief held that the monarch was God's chosen representative on earth, which not only justified their right to rule, but also placed a religious obligation on the populace to obey his mandates. Enforcement of royal power was multifaceted, involving a combination of legal, military, and cultural mechanisms. The king had the ultimate judicial authority, the power to legislate and to pardon. Militarily, he was the commander-in-chief of an army who swore their allegiances to him instead of the state, a significant power particularly in times of feudal conflict and external wars. Culturally, the monarchy was supported by a network of patronage and spectacle, with the court at Versailles being a prime example of this. The opulence and ritual of the court served to reinforce the image of the king as an almost celestial figure above ordinary men. The French government itself was structured with the king at its center, surrounded by a series of advisory bodies and councils. The most significant of these was the Conseil du Roi, or King's Council, which advised the king on matters of state and played a key role in the administration of government. Over time, the monarchy evolved to include more structured ministries covering areas like war, foreign affairs, and finance, which were staffed by professionals who were often nobles of the robe, those who purchased their titles and could serve in administrative roles. Much like other monarchies, the French nobility was made up of a hierarchy of titles, with the apex being the king, followed by the princes du sang, or princes of the blood, who were close royal relatives with claims to the throne. Below them were the titled nobility, which included dukes, the highest rank beneath the princes, followed by counts, viscounts, and barons. Each title had its own set of responsibilities and privileges, and many were hereditary, being passed from father to son and cementing the power and influence of noble families over generations. Not all titles were hereditary, however. Some were bestowed by the monarch for service or favor, and these could be revoked or not renewed on the death of the holder. The system of ennoblement and title grant was a powerful tool in the hands of the monarch, allowing him to reward loyalty and service, thus ensuring the allegiance of powerful individuals and families. Special titles were reserved for those in line to the throne. The heir apparent was known as the Dauphin, a title dating back to the 14th century. This title was not merely symbolic but held significant importance in the royal hierarchy, as the Dauphin was groomed for kingship from birth. The title of Dauphin was unique in that it was always held by the eldest son of the current monarch, ensuring that the line of succession was clear. The French monarchy was a deeply hierarchical and ceremonial system where power was both absolute and intricately tied to the person of the king. The hierarchy of titles and the structure of government center around the monarch were designed to reinforce his power and deeply embed them into the cultural, political, and social fabric of France. Part 2. The Revolution. The French Revolution was a watershed event that reshaped modern history, starting with the dramatic demise of the French monarchy. There isn't one factor which led to the French Revolution, but rather multiple factors coming together at a time when an ineffective and out-of-touch monarch was on the throne. By the late 18th century, France's economy was on the brink of collapse. King Louis XVI's government was deeply in debt, exacerbated by involvement in the American Revolution and extravagant spending by the monarchy. Attempts to reform the tax system were repeatedly blocked by the Parlement and the Estates General, reflecting the entrenched interests of the nobility and clergy who were largely exempt from taxes. French society was also undergoing a shift during this time, with the Enlightenment ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity gaining traction among the populace, challenging the traditional hierarchies enforced by the monarchy and aristocracy. The burgeoning bourgeoisie, enriched yet politically marginalized, were particularly influenced by these ideas. Speaking of politics, the ineffective leadership of Louis XVI further destabilized the nation. His indecisiveness and perceived detachment from the realities of commoners' distress contributed to the growing dissent. The revolution would officially begin in 1789, after a series of key events would lead to all-out revolution. Let's take a look at these events, which have since become recognized as the early stages of France's first revolution. The Estates General was an assembly in pre-revolutionary France that brought together representatives from the three primary social classes, or estates: the clergy, first estate; the nobility, second estate; and the commoners, third estate. This body was summoned occasionally by the monarch to discuss and advise on matters of national importance, typically in times of crisis. Convened in May 1789, the Estates General meeting marked the first such assembly since 1614, primarily called to address the severe financial crisis facing France. The crisis was caused by years of deficit spending on wars and luxuries, coupled with an inefficient and unfair tax system that spared the nobility and clergy while heavily taxing the peasantry. However, the meeting quickly transcended its original purpose. As representatives from the three estates gathered at Versailles, the demands of the Third Estate, which comprised about 96% of the population, brought to light the stark inequalities in French society. They challenged the existing social and political order by opposing the aristocratic and clerical privileges that had exacerbated their economic burdens. This confrontation of grievances did more than address financial reforms. It sparked a broader debate about rights, representation, and the structure of the state, setting the stage for the radical transformations that would lead to the French Revolution. The tennis court oath is a pivotal moment in French history, marking a decisive break from the Ancien Regime and the absolute authority of the monarchy. On June 20, 1789, the members of the Third Estate, which consisted mostly of commoners but also included some clergy and liberal nobles, were barred from their usual meeting place by King Louis XVI. This act was part of the broader tension and struggle for power between the different estates and the monarchy amidst financial crisis and widespread social unrest. In response to being locked out, these representatives found an alternative gathering place at a nearby indoor tennis court, the Jeu de Paume. Here, in a dramatic and spontaneous act of defiance, they pledged the tennis court oath, swearing not to separate and to reassemble wherever circumstances require until the constitution of the kingdom is established. This oath signified a new assertion of unity and the resolve of the Third Estate to claim greater political representation and rights. The significance of the tennis court oath lies not just in the commitment to continue meeting until a new constitution was enacted, but also in its challenge to the existing order. It represented a collective realization that the old ways of governance, based on the divisions of the Estates General, were no longer acceptable. This was the first step towards the establishment of a new governmental structure that recognized the voice and rights of the common people, setting the stage for the subsequent upheavals of the French Revolution. The oath was a bold affirmation of popular sovereignty, underscoring a fundamental shift towards democracy and the principle that authority derived from the nation's citizens rather than from monarchical decree or divine right. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, stands as a pivotal moment in the French Revolution, marking the collapse of royal authority and the rise of popular sovereignty. The fortress, long a symbol of the monarchy's absolutism and oppression, was attacked by a mob primarily composed of artisans and workers. Their goal was not only to free the prisoners, of whom there were few, but also to secure the large quantities of gunpowder stored within. The actual assault on the Bastille was chaotic and violent. The defenders, a small contingent of guards, were quickly overwhelmed by the determined crowd. The governor of the Bastille, Bernard-René Jourdan, was captured and killed, his head paraded around the city on a pike. The fall of the Bastille was not just a physical victory, but a massive psychological blow to the monarchy. These events were crucial, not merely as reactions to immediate issues, but as emblematic rejections of the old regime's power, setting the revolutionary agenda. The response of the monarchy to these unfolding events was marked by confusion and missteps. Initially, the royal forces were caught off guard by the speed and intensity of the public's uprising. The dismissal of Jacques Necker by King Louis XVI played a crucial role in the escalation of political tensions leading up to the French Revolution. Necker, who was the Director General of Finances, had earned widespread popularity and trust among the common people, especially the Third Estate, which comprised the vast majority of the French populace. Necker's dismissal came at a time of economic turmoil and general discontent with the monarchy's handling of fiscal policies and social inequalities. The king's decision to remove him was perceived as a direct affront to the Third Estate and those who supported more significant reform in the government. The news of Necker's removal spread rapidly, fueling rumors and stoking fears of a reactionary plot by the monarchy against those pushing for more democratic representation. This act intensified the already volatile mood among the populace of Paris and contributed to a sense of impending crisis. It was a catalyst that compelled the people to action, leading directly to the storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789. In the tumultuous days following the dismissal of Jacques Necker and the storming of the Bastille, King Louis XVI's reaction was markedly indecisive. The king found himself torn between the advice of conservative court factions urging repression to maintain royal authority and the liberal voices advocating for concessions to appease the increasingly agitated populace.
The level of incompetence in this office is staggering.
This indecisiveness led to a lack of clear strategy and response, which only intensified the public's dissatisfaction and distrust. The king's faltering steps were evident when, after the fall of the Bastille, he reinstated Necker, attempting to calm the public outrage. This move, though conciliatory, was seen as too little, too late. Moreover, his subsequent actions, which included symbolic gestures like visiting Paris and wearing the tricolor cockade, failed to convince the revolutionary leaders and the broader public of his sincerity in supporting substantial reforms. As Louis XVI continued to grapple with the escalating demands for change, his inability to commit fully to either repression or reform led to a gradual erosion of trust among all parties. By the time he recognized the need to accept more substantive reforms, the revolutionary momentum had shifted significantly. The power dynamics were now favoring the revolutionary assemblies and local committees, diminishing the influence and authority of the monarchy. The October days of 1789 were a crucial turning point in the French Revolution, highlighting the severe breakdown in royal authority. Fueled by economic hardship and rumors of royal extravagance, a crowd, notably including many market women, marched from Paris to Versailles on October 5th. Their demands were straightforward: address the food shortage and move the monarchy closer to the people. This act was not just a protest, but a decisive assertion of power. The demonstrators penetrated Versailles, symbolizing the monarchy's vulnerability. They successfully forced King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette to relocate to Paris, effectively making them hostages within their own capital. This event dramatically showcased the collapse of royal control outside of Paris and signaled a significant shift in power from the monarchy to the revolutionaries, paving the way for more radical phases of the revolution. The early stages of the French Revolution were characterized by rapid escalation from financial crisis and ideological challenge to outright rebellion. The causes of the revolution were deeply intertwined with the actions of the monarchy, whose missteps and miscalculations during the crucial early days set the stage for the radical transformations that were to follow. Part 3. Abolishment. The abolition of the monarchy was not a predetermined outcome at the onset of the revolution. Rather, it was the culmination of escalating radicalism fueled by key events and shifting public sentiments. As the revolution progressed, the initial demands for fiscal reform and constitutional monarchy evolved dramatically amid widespread crises and radical political shifts. Key figures in this decisive shift were the Jacobins, led by influential and radical leaders like Maximilien Robespierre, who advocated for a complete transformation of the French state. The political landscape was also significantly shaped by the sans-culottes, working-class Parisians whose demands and direct actions pushed the revolution toward more radical outcomes. Public opinion played a crucial role, particularly after the king's failed attempt to flee in 1791, which irreparably damaged his standing among the populace and depicted him as a traitor to the revolutionary cause. The monarchy's fate was sealed by the insurrection of August 10, 1792, when revolutionaries stormed the Tuileries Palace, leading to the suspension of the king and calling for a national convention to decide the future form of government. The formal decision to abolish the monarchy came on September 21, 1792, when the newly convened National Convention declared France a republic. This was a momentous decision made amidst fierce debates about the future of France, reflecting the ascendancy of radical republicanism. The steps following the decision were swift and grim for the royal family. King Louis XV was tried for treason against the state, convicted, and executed by guillotine in January 1793. This act symbolized the irreversible break from monarchical rule and was a clear message of the new political order. Marie Antoinette, the Queen, met a similar fate in October 1793, reflecting the revolutionaries' resolve to eradicate the vestiges of the old regime. The wider royal family also faced dire consequences. Many were imprisoned, including the king's sister and the royal children. Others managed to escape abroad, where they became symbols of the counter-revolutionary cause. The abolition of the monarchy did not lead to immediate stability. Instead, France entered a period known as the Reign of Terror, overseen by the Committee of Public Safety under Robespierre's leadership. The period was marked by extreme measures against perceived enemies of the revolution, showcasing the radical potential of revolutionary governance, but also highlighting its capacity for violence. The fall of Robespierre in 1794 marked the end of the Terror, but not the end of the Republic. The subsequent government, the Directory, faced ongoing wars and internal strife, demonstrating the difficulties of governance after such a profound upheaval. Eventually, the instability of the Directory paved the way for the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who initially seized power in a coup in 1799, later crowning himself emperor in 1804. This turn of events underscored the complexities of revolutionary change as the ideals of republicanism temporarily gave way to a new form of authoritarian rule under a different guise. The fall of the French monarchy and the establishment of the First Republic marked one of the most radical transformations in Western political history. It demonstrated the power of revolutionary ideals and the potential for dramatic shifts in governance. However, the ensuing years also highlighted the challenges of maintaining stability and democratic principles in the wake of such significant upheaval. Conclusion. Thank you so much for watching the second video in our series on abolished monarchies. If you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our future videos. Next week, we'll be heading to the Middle East to take a look at the Shahs of Iran, from how they gained power to fleeing their country and their people. Let us know in the comments below what other monarchies you'd like to see covered.